Hello everyone, and welcome to how I brought my Apple Macintosh SE30 back to life with a Raspberry Pi. And part 2 is finally here. In today's video, I give you an in-depth and detailed overview of how I fit and mounted everything into a chassis of an SE30. And I also give general insight on the overall configuration and how it's all connected up to the Raspberry Pi. I made some difficult decisions and decided to maintain the original chassis to not cut any more holes than how it already was when I received it. My original plan was to add a USB floppy drive to the Pi to take the Macintosh to the next level and try and keep the original Macintosh functionality. However, I was unable to find a way to auto-mount within the emulator Basculus 2, so it seems the Linux build differs where the Windows versions, etc. do. So, on that regards, I waved the white flag, and I think overall my end result turned out pretty awesome. So stay tuned for the rest of the video to see a cool feature I added as we dive in. Alright guys, so working our way from the front to the back. I started with just a simple screen. I used a 4x3 screen. I found some kind of weird, crazy one on Amazon that worked well, and it's just HDMI compatible, of course, for the Raspberry Pi. It did need a separate power source because it couldn't run off of like the Raspberry Pi's GPIO pins or something like that, unfortunately. But worked out pretty good. You'll see how I worked it out using a power strip, small power strip in there. And thankfully the Macintosh SE30's chassis is big enough to fit one. But yeah, just a simple screen in the front here. Nothing fancy, just an LCD screen. Yeah, so working our way that's the front. Let's check out the back now. My I/O wonderful, magical attempt at trying to maintain the original aesthetics of the Macintosh SE30. It was very difficult to sacrifice and make some hard decisions to really try and maintain that original I/O. But this is what I got. We'll start from left to right. What I got in total is an ADB connection. I have several USB ports, an Ethernet jack, as well as a 3.5 millimeter for headphones, and of course the power button to power the Raspberry Pi on and off. The monitor turns on and off with the power when it plugs in the power itself. Kind of explaining the power first, I guess. So this is the kind of the power cable that comes from the power surge strip inside this guy, and that powers everything inside there. So basically all I have to do is connect this guy and to the wall, and we're set to go. And then I just press the power button and the Raspberry Pi turns on. Super simple. Try to make it just like the original Mac, to not have any kind of extra steps to maintain that original stock feeling. So let's start with the ADB connection. I have one. I was able to put in one, and I try to think about not destroying the case and maintaining that history to preserve it as much as possible. So I opted with using hot glue to kind of go and adhere and mount these to the case. That way I could actually remove and move it around as needed later, or even remove this all and just leave the chassis as is, even if I wanted to maintain this piece of history. So I really wanted to try to preserve this Macintosh SE30 as much as possible, just to try to reiterate that here. So let's get a little good zoom in here for the ADB. Zoom in here on the I/O shield. So from left to right in the video pictured here. On the left, I have a Trackware 80B to USB adapter. And what that is basically it translates the ADB keyboard and mouse to the Raspberry Pi, allowing me to utilize modern devices with ADB peripherals. So this works out perfect. It maintains that stock aesthetic as well as giving it an upgrade to the modern world. I highly recommend if you guys have any ADB keyboards and mice and you want to use it on, like, say, it's a project like this, or even on your own home computer or even gaming, it's awesome. ADB to USB works out perfect. It's super easy, plug and play. All you do is you got a little adapter. I'll show you guys in a little bit here later in the video as I crack open the case. But it's a little small it's a USB micro, and it a cable, and it USB plugs into the Raspberry Pi with USB, and then the other end, of course, you got their ADB connector. And I just kind of flush mounted that with the chassis to give that look and a stock aesthetic appeal, almost looking like a real Macintosh. So, and then we got our USB connector. I use that primarily for external devices, like maybe mostly if the ADB keyboard doesn't work or something, if I have to do any kind of whatever, really. You can plug in a joystick, I don't know, a gamepad, just an extra USB port. And I thought that the that kind of look of the printer, is it the floppy, that looked kind of perfect, the way that the cable kind of just fit in there. So I just thought that looked pretty nice. And then moving our way over through the I/O ports, we have a 2-port USB powered hub, and this is used so that I can plug in an external USB CD-ROM drive and then allow, which, because I'm emulating Mac OS 8, I can actually put in real Mac CDs, burn CDs, whatever, from Macintosh repository, Garden, whatever, and play and mount games, whatever. It's awesome. I will be showing you guys that later in the video, but I have that in there for that specific reason, so that because it's powered, because the Raspberry Pi USB hub or USB ports don't have enough ports, so the USB hub provides that power. So that works out perfect. And yeah, it's pretty cool looking. It works out. I made sure that the USB plugs fit nice and snug into there. I'll show you guys kind of everything plugged in here later in the video. Moving over to the right, we have our 3.5 millimeter jack here. Just gonna move that there. Yeah, so something simple. The only caveat with the 3.5 millimeter jack is the fact that I have to go in Raspberry config, and switch over from HDMI to 3.5 millimeter jack, because I have it on auto detection, and then I had some issues, so I had it manually set to HDMI. So I just have to change that. But it works great, so I have that functionality, so I don't have to crack open the case and plug it in headphones that way. And of course, last but not least, zooming out, we have our Ethernet port. And of course, you're probably wondering, why do I have an Ethernet port if you have a Raspberry Pi? Well, I have this kind of designed and set up in an old-fashioned way, and of course, with me and my security and my home network, this particular Raspberry Pi doesn't see my SSIDs, so because I only transmit 5 gig, and long story short, I just gave up and just said, hey, well, it keeps the aesthetic vintage part of that, so yeah, I just use a hardwired Ethernet cable to do file transfers, to do games and applications for the emulation of for Basculus 2 emulator, to move files back and forth, save my game saves, all that good stuff. But yeah, that's basically the back. Yeah, and of course you got your power button, one-click power button, and then it's got a little LED indicator to tell me when the Pi is actually on and off. And let's move ourselves inside and check out how I really created this whole beast and finish up this video here so we can play some games here for the end, right? There she goes. Lift up easy. And so we got to mount the monitor, thanks to my dad actually. He engineered this mount using a plexiglass, or polycarbonate plexi mount, plastic mount. It looks like glass, but it's polycarbonate plexi. And just mounted it like so, trying to use the original holes. It's in really nice condition. Love it. I'm going to set that aside gently and we'll dive in and look at the rest of this guy. Alright guys, so here we are finally inside, diving into this messy mess of wires that I have running this whole show. So let's get started with the main part that runs it, the power, of course. We got a Wobber power strip. It's an industrial power strip that I got from Amazon. And basically what I got here is the Raspberry Pi plugged in. We have the USB power hub and the monitor plugged in, and I got all of them aligned in just perfectly into a 4-port power strip, kind of angled in just enough where I have all of the kind of plugs angled in a certain direction where they work, and the bends are not too stressful on the cables. And as well as I have basically kind of routed all of the cables under the chassis to kind of show you. You can kind of see the HDMI cable, and I have everything routed in and under through that. So make it everything nice and flush with the rest of the chassis itself. You got the Raspberry Pi 3B running the whole show, and everything's kind of channeled through at the bottom, as I said, in the chassis. Everything's plugged in up there. Nothing much to it, but I tried to think about where to mount these guys. You know, if I wanted to put the Raspberry Pi on the side and power strip on the side or whatever, mount on the bottom. And again, I was just trying to keep everything stock and the aesthetics and not cut any holes. So I opted for keeping it messy inside, and so unfortunately, leave the comments below. No worries on that. The critique away. Sometimes you have to cut corners somewhere, and sometimes you just have to say the project is finished, because the project is never finished, isn't it? But yeah, that's basically what's inside the Mac Pi and what's running it all. Nothing much to it, guys. Let's move on to the fun stuff and button this all back together and play some games and just kind of show you the finished product all in its glory, especially with the USB CD-ROM drive running, and maybe we can plug in and play some Marathon. Let's get to that and finish this up here. Well, here we are, guys, at the end here with the finished product. Booting up, I just powered it on. Raspberry Pi is powered on. Screen detected signal. Starts to boot up. And oh, forgot to mention the screen has built-in sound, so it just uses HDMI. So we're all set with that. Using my custom boot screen, as you probably guys saw before on part 1 video. Got my USB CD-ROM drive over there. Gonna put in a disc. Maybe we'll play some Marathon Infinity or whatever. We'll check it out. Maybe some Duke Nukem. Let's see what we got over here on my games CD rack and see what we can play. But so I got a Marathon Trilogy burned disc here, Macintosh repository. I'm gonna go ahead and insert the disc there, show you that it'll appear on the desktop. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And there we go. We have auto detection, and it auto mounted the disc and everything like a real disc. And that's because it is a real disc and it's acting just as a real Macintosh, just like you would insert one in any other computer. I mounted it up great for the Marathon Trilogy. It's got the little background for the disc even and everything. It's working great. You can see over there to the right, even the disc icon mounted, Marathon Trilogy. Really a great, awesome feature, having powered USB and able to plug in a CD-ROM drive. That is a big, big thing. Really cool. Really cool. Even got Oregon Trail running and everything. Saved our game. Yep, we've already saved. We'll hit save again just to make sure. Because the only thing we want to be dying from is dysentery, not from our game save not being saved. But everything works. That is pretty much the tour of the operating system. It's pretty much macOS 8.1, and right now I have emulated running 136 megabytes of memory, plenty of memory to run, and the Mac thinks it's a Quadra 900, so not too shabby. Pretty fast. I wanted to make sure it was fast enough to run all the games, however, not as accurate to the Macintosh SE 30, of course, but the point of this was to also play a lot of games and emulate them easily. And I chose to opt with that in that manner. And before I go, I just wanted to show a cool little feature that Basculus 2 has. If you click on the Unix icon, basically that's your Raspberry Pi volume mounted in Macintosh, so you can actually go to your home folder and then your Pi folder, and then you can even you can zip. I have my game saved there, so I can transfer them via network. And there's some other games. There's like SimCity. I got in a Stuff It folder, and that's how you actually, or at least I do, transfer games over via SSH over to the Raspberry Pi, and then I open it up right in here within the Mac itself. Pretty cool, if I don't say so myself. Well, we're here at the end of the video. I thank you for sticking around with this. Finally got this awesome finished final product, the Macintosh. It's been a long and very educational journey learning about emulation regarding Macintosh computers. Emulating Macs is very interesting, especially when it comes to the Retro Macs. Basculus 2 is very interesting. I'd say cranky at the least. And once you get your configuration files, it's perfect. And you can get it stable just like I did. And then you can play most games without any issue and really enjoy your classic Macintosh feel right on a Raspberry Pi. And with this project, it's basically bringing back a Macintosh back to life, just like it was. And I would agree that it did, and if you don't, feel free to comment, but otherwise comment below and let me know how you think I did with this awesome Macintosh, basically bringing back the Macintosh SE30 back to life. Now I know I didn't exactly have the exact specs, especially when it comes to running macOS 8.1 and some of the hardware specifications that I'm emulating. I wanted to do that again, as I said earlier in the video, to make sure that I can run all the games that I wanted to, especially with making it easier on my life with emulation wise. But overall, this was a really great project, and I hope you enjoyed the video. We went over basically how I made and put it all together inside the chassis, the story of how I even got it all, and kind of the thinking of the evolution of all-in-one desktop computers and how it all started. It's crazy to think how we got here, and to think that this guy is being powered by a tiny little, well, really a tiny little chip, single onboard computer chip that basically is running the whole show. Before, there was a big motherboard in here running it all. So it's amazing to see how far we've come. And make sure you like and subscribe as always. And let's see what we got. Let's enjoy, and maybe I'll check it out and see what else we got going on here. Maybe make another video, who knows. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching.